Oh, this week, our topic is the importance of soul receptivity. And so we'll be reading now from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Chapter 1 of the Gospel of St. John states, "But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name." This was a passage Paramhansa Yogananda often quoted to his disciples. Be in tune, he would tell them. Delusion can't touch you if you will keep in tune. "A few of you will fall," he said once, "but it needn't be if you stay in tune." Of a disciple who became highly advanced, even though she didn't meditate much, he said, she got there by attunement. To one who found meditation difficult, he said, I will meditate for you as long as you stay in tune. Truth is a state of consciousness, not a well-worded definition. It is in that consciousness, above all, that our lives are transformed. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita says in the 10th chapter, "To those who are ever attached to me and who worship me with love, I impart discernment, by means of which they attain me. Out of my love for them, I, the divine within them, set a light in them, the radiant lamp of wisdom, thereby dispelling the darkness of their ignorance. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind." Om. Om.
Oh, what a joy. And attunement is the topic really of this Sunday service. It's like, what part of us, that receptivity do we, that receptive is attunement. Ultimately, it's getting our there. So I thought I'd start today with an exercise for us all. We're going to read a Whispers from Eternity. It's called, O Divine Sculptor, Chisel Thou My Life. And now Jyotish did this in a Sunday service a few years ago, and he said it's a really, really important Whispers from Eternity. And we're going to read it through twice, and the first time we're going to try and take in this Whispers from Eternity. And then the next one, we're really going to attune to it, and it's basically the way we're going to find freedom, and it's a really powerful. So it's number 72, O Divine Sculptor, Chisel Thou My Life. And for those that want to do it during the week, if you want to, if you type it in a Google chat, the Ananda will pop up, and the Whispers from Eternity will pop up for you to read. So let's close our eyes and let's put all our energy behind these words as I read it through twice. Every sound that I make, let it have the vibration of thy voice. Every thought that I think, let it be saturated with consciousness of thy presence. Let every feeling that I have glow with thy love. Let every act of my will be impregnated with thy divine vitality. Let every thought, every expression, every ambition be ornamented by thee. O divine sculptor, chisel thou my life according to thy design. So I'll read it one more time. Just let's take it really deep and put a lot of will and energy behind it. Every sound that I make, let it have the vibration of thy voice. Every thought that I think, let it be saturated with the consciousness of thy presence. Let every feeling that I have glow with thy love. Let every act of my will be impregnated with thy divine vitality. Let every thought, every expression, every ambition be ornamented by thee. O divine sculptor, chisel thou my life according to thy design. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. What a beautiful whispers prayer demand, really, isn't it? And it's interesting when you read the autobiography of a yogi or you go through it, every encounter that Yogananda has, he essentially asks something of a saint. He asks a saint for a blessing or for whatever that is, or even story. But most of the time through this book, that saint takes time to attune to the divine will before that's done. And the interesting thing about that is, even when Yogananda met his guru and asked to be introduced to Divine Mother or have that experience, it was taken in deep reverence before that answer came, that enlightened being or the Guruji actually attuned to see if it was God's will. And it's such a powerful part of this lesson that we're speaking of today. So I thought I'd start, as I normally do, with a bit of a dad joke, and it's kind of like an interesting thing. But the other day I was trying to eat an hourglass, and
did you say eat?
Yeah, but it was very time consuming.
Oh my gosh, that's the joke. What does that say about me? I just did not get that was funny even from the get-go. Okay, anyway. I'm very literal. Does that mean I'm literal?
I love it. It's very amazing.
You ate that time, Pete? That's probably more funny than your punchline.
It was very good. And it sort of brought to me a bit of a thought about this attunement style of thing. And it's very interesting because we know that God created us out of his own being. And that's interesting. That's all the 8 aspects of God. And if you think about it from an hourglass perspective, I'm sure this is a lot less than an hourglass, but just to give you a visual, God was here and decided to separate himself into us beings. So this is God pushing out. And if you think of every grain of sand in this hourglass that pops through as being the 8 aspects of him. So obviously this channel that we see through here is that ability to pop through and then expand. And the reason why I'm showing you this hourglass is an attunement is the interesting thing, and Yogananda said this, is God gave everything of his being. The only thing that he didn't give, or the only thing that he asks of back, is our love, which is one of the aspects of God. And given free will, that's our choice to love back. So that's flipping it back and giving that love back to the infinite spirit. And as you can see, that's our hourglass is very, very dependent on each individual grain of sand. And we'll talk through the bigger or the larger aspect of it and then move to a more inward experience of this. But if you think about this, each grain of sand comes out and then we do what? And our ultimate goal is to know that we are a part of that. We actually are that grain of sand and we can return back to God. And we're pretty fortunate that we have millions and millions of years and lifetimes to remember this. So it's kind of an interesting thing, isn't it? We sort of pop through and we pop on this. So what actually happens to us? And if you think about what the relationship between our the self-affirmation and
work
work and everything that we actually do. So when we're here, we see each grain of sand as not being God. It's a reflection. So we actually see it being inside this, and we look at all the little grains of sand or the aspects of God. And what do? We take them. We think that they're ours. So we're a grain of sand, but then we start attaching to other grains of sand. And over lifetimes, you could imagine how big that little grain of sand becomes. Now, the interesting thing, if you look very close, is this is dependent, the flow of this is dependent on us being able to fit back through that portal. But as we clump and get thick, we have this joyful period of time where we think, period of time on lifetimes, of becoming clumped. We become this big clump of sand, and then guess what happens? We can't flow back through. God can tip this way, but if we're clumped, we can't ultimately give it back the other way. And this is the free will that God's given us. And all he asks for is our love that dissolves this. And so from a bigger, broader perspective of this, what are we actually doing? What is it that we're doing? We're taking, aren't we? We're always taking. We were just listening to a beautiful talk, and we'll share it after this, from Jyotish and Davy. And the number one aspect that they talk about with building community is not taking, it's giving. And the foundations of everything that they've brought through is actually giving. So what does that do when we're talking about this grain of sand? Giving means that we're not taking the grains of sand and clumping them together. We're separating them, allowing the flow to come back through. And it's such an amazing thing. And so I've kind of written a few aspects back down here. So at the hourglass, we've clumped together this block of sand. We've blocked this flow back through. We're sick of suffering. We want to open them back up. And to do that, we have to have attunement. I've written down 3 G's, and that is A, the guru. The guru is the chisel that we hear about. The guru can chisel away at that sand. Why? Because he is that 8 elements, and he flows freely between the hourglass. He can go either way, completely through. So on the way through, he magnetizes and takes away those clumps of sand that we've accumulated over these lifetimes. And so the guru is really important. And the next part about that was what I just spoke about. It's the giving. It's giving away instead of taking. Even think about in your everyday life how much you're taking from what's around us rather than giving. If you changed that simple thought to, how do I serve that person? How do I help them find God in every element that we do? And that may not be walking up and saying, hey, dude, you need to find God. That'll solve all your problems. But it's about giving energy to them to allow them to see a bright light and maybe shine that light and say, hey, where is that from? Or show those 8 elements back to that person, reflect them back and say that we all have that ability because that's within us. We are, that grain of sand is God. But instead of taking and hoarding it, we're giving it away. And then the other one, the 3rd G that I've written down is actually gratitude. And if you look at the from work, it talks about gratitude, doesn't it? Within the work element, it's gratitude. In gratitude simply for our God-given power to be useful to all our fellow men. So guru, giving, and gratitude from a big perspective is what's going to start breaking down these clumps of sand that we've accumulated over this period of time. And then as we go into this hourglass even more, so we've sort of talked about it from an outside or a worldly perspective, and we start drawing us in, if we think about this hourglass, inside of our being, we know we have the astral spine, we have the ira and the pingala, and that comes in from the medulla down the spine and then flows back up. So it's every time we breathe, it flows in and out energetically. At each of the elements within that period of time. Think of how many lifetimes we've clumped up these chakras. We talk about it from a different perspective, but each chakra is exactly that. So from a grain of sand point of view, every time that we have a want or a need, we're blocking up the sand filter that divides us between us and God. And if you think of the little point that it squeezes through as actually being the spiritual eye, and our goal is what? To break down each element of our chakras and the vrittis that are there to allow the free-flowing energy to come through the spiritual eye and connect us with God. And again, the attunement of that. So if you think of each element of God, every time we attune or try and expand that, and we use the guru helps us chisel those away, each one of those little sand blocks that we build up, and allows that flow to come through. And if we think about what we've been given as tools to allow this to open up, we think about meditation, we think about all the things that are breaking up those vrittis, but ultimately they're working with energy flow. And every time we start that energy flow, we're moving and breaking away these bits of sand that we've accumulated over lifetime to allow that beautiful flow to come through and attune to the divine. So it's the amazing ability of attunement to the guru and God allows that flow to keep moving on and keep happening. So I'm going to keep it really short and sweet today, but we have that ability to break that sand away, and I'll repeat those again. And if we look at them, so it's guru, giving, and gratitude, and the attunement to the 8 elements of God. If you think about our meditation, Yogananda spoke about either attuning with God or attuning with one of those 8 elements. And so you'll often hear in meditation, guided meditation, where you think, oh, let's expand on light, let's expand on love, let's expand on peace, you know, even power, and all those 8 elements that we have within God. So that is each one of those elements that we're trying to expand. And when we're expanding through meditation, what we're actually doing is opening up this little portal to allow that flow to and from. And the more that we can open up that little portal, is that absolute creativity and the connection between the two of us. So, Jai Guru.
That was really neat. So one of the things that you might remember from our reading today, Rays of the One Light, was that Bhagavad Gita quote where God's speaking through Krishna to Arjuna and discussing the importance of discernment. And I thought that was so interesting because Jyotish, in his talk on soul receptivity years ago, was explaining that when you're experiencing your karma, there's not anything we can do to change the karma itself. It must come through us and have an experience that we go through and learn from, or perhaps we've learned a lesson, but the karma still needs to take place. But the discernment is how we look at it. It's how we have faith or not that this came from God. Whatever is happening to us, we have faith that somewhere in our past, we set that event in motion, didn't we? But discerning that it is not God's anger toward us, or that we're in trouble, or that there's any blame. It's discerning that this is an act of love. This is my lesson to learn, and I accept it with gratitude. And then we can give love to God through that faith, through that attunement to Spirit, and Spirit's love for us through this world to teach us. And because of what Nara was expressing, we have a choice. The only thing that God can't have is our love. We have to choose freely to give it to God. And so that's that choice on the train of our karma. This is something we've talked about before. We have a choice to experiencing our karma with joy or not, and being here through it or not. However, there's also the choice of loving God through the karma. And so that's the element that is important when it comes to soul receptivity. And when you think about the word receptivity, you can feel how much it has to do with openness. The more open we are to God's love, and, the more open our heart is to love within this world, but also, inward and upward, the more that we can go through these things gracefully. And Swamiji talks at great length about the importance of having that open heart, having that open communication with God in our daily life, in our meditation practice. That is partly it's what brings us back to whether or not we're going to feel that we're drawing grace into those experiences. The higher power that, we talk about helping us through obstacles and challenges, that comes from us having an open heart through those experiences, because we can't cooperate with the grace that wants to be a part of our life if we're not open to it, right? Makes sense. If I'm not open and my heart's not open, it's going to be a lot more difficult for grace to enter in through that window of our consciousness. The curtains are open, light can come in, or they're shut. And if you think about it, it's just like in any garden. The roses and the beautiful flowers that grow, what do they do every day? They're open. We were watching this really neat educational video from David Attenborough, and he was discussing, and he's the conservationist, environmentalist, biologist, scientist, very well known, very beautiful stories that he tells about nature. But he brought in this interesting experiment of how they could measure the electric energetic output that is made by plants through sound. And when the birds begin to chirp in the morning, they're emitting sound. And as the birds are chirping, the plants receive the sound and then they open. And that's the same with the light. It's the same with sunshine. You can imagine if a plant stayed shut, it wouldn't have this symbiotic relationship with all that is around it. It wouldn't be able to have the birds, the bees, the sunshine, the water. It's amazing to think about us as those little flowers. So we're the same. We have to open our hearts with that attitude and attitude of gratitude and those affirmations of love and openness, so that our lives can be transformed, so that we don't go through all of our challenges like this, but like this. It's very simple when you think about it. And then the other, just like the last little thought that came to me that's important about this week's topic, when it comes to receptivity, we all know that the Kundalini energy that sits in the astral spine is waiting to be awakened. And if, again, you think of us as a part of this world waiting to be completely freed so that all of our energy can become joy, it's all about transmutation. So every little particle of our little buzzing electric field is freedom. It is joy. It's not bound by any form of matter. It is just a part of the energetic field of creation. So no separation, just bouncing with joy. It's completely vibrating in love, right? That's the ultimate being one with Om. You just are completely vibrating in Om. But the way to do that is to raise that Kundalini, because that is the gathering of all of that electric force into the spine and up, so that we can go here completely, like you said, being free. And so very simply, things that raise our Kundalini, meditation practice, but also good attitudes. Did you know that gossip or talking down on other people or the day or the politics of the time, it actually brings the Kundalini back down? So if you think about just the little things that we do as we go about our day, in our working day, and our activity with our loved ones, Think about how what you're doing affects your freedom. Next time you're considering if you're going to react in a certain direction, remind yourself, wait, why am I here? Oh yeah, I want to be free. Maybe I'll go that route. And then even though karma is what it is, we can't keep blaming life, but rather being grateful for our challenges, no matter how much they're difficult. That's valid. But behind them is love. Behind them is joy. And we want to live in that joy. We want to be free from suffering. So we have to make those choices every day to meditate, to be around like-minded electric fields. We're going to keep giving to one another, back to Guruji, back to our communities. And until all of those molecules are aligned with Om, and we don't have to go in this Maya up and down, up and down. We're just in stillness, which is pure bliss, ever conscious, ever new, ever existing bliss. We should probably try to do that. I think we should all go out this week and make those little micro decisions to go up instead of down, to go in instead of out, and just really focus on Kundalini rising, being receptive to God, and watch that grace come into your life. I think we've all seen it. We all start saying, oh my gosh, that was so synchronistic. And that is the goal. We want to be in harmony, in attunement with God's flow, and it will allow us to break through. So thank you all so much for being a part of today. And we have beautiful songs picked out for us all to listen to now, and just let all these teachings seep in. So we'll do that before we have our little break.